I'm Dr. Todd Baker with Zola Levitt Ministries. So we caught up with Dr. Randall Price, a longtime friend of the ministry, and he discusses the land covenant of Israel in the New Testament, an often neglected subject that's usually confined to the Old Testament. And what he has to say is very enlightening. I'm here with Dr. Randall Price, the founder and president of World of the Bible Ministries. He's an author of many books. The Temple and Bible Prophecy, which is an excellent book. I have that, and I highly recommend it to a serious student of Bible prophecy. Jerusalem in Prophecy and The Stones Cry Out. That book in particular is really good because it shows you how archaeology proves the historicity and the historical accuracy of the Bible. I'm glad you're with us today, Dr. Price.
May I add that I'm also the executive director of the Center for Judaic Studies at Liberty University.
Yes.
So we have a program in Jewish studies that I direct, and that's very close to my heart.
Yes, and you got your PhD in Semitic Studies from University of Texas.
That's
right?
correct. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, here at the Pre-Trib Conference of 2013, the theme is Lovers of Zion, God's plan for the Jewish people, the nation of Israel, and your talk was on the promise of the promised land to Israel in the Old Testament, which is well established. But I wanted to touch on what the New Testament says about that theme. If you could kind of give us an overview of that.
Well, Christians call the New Testament the New Covenant, the Brit Hadashah, and that is true. It contains the New Covenant, which was established by the death of Messiah. The issue, though, is that when we look at the Old Testament, the New Covenant presented in Jeremiah 31, throughout the prophets of the Bible as well, relates to national Israel. It was given to national Israel. It is partaken of by the church. They share in those blessings. So a remnant of the Jewish nation, a remnant of the Gentile nation, together in one body of Messiah, enjoy the spiritual blessings that come from the New Covenant, largely because in the Abrahamic covenant, Genesis 12:3, it was said that in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. So as the Jewish people in Messiah, are doing what they are supposed to be doing, that is, embracing Messiah, following the Lord, and in Romans 10, very clear, it says a remnant has been preserved according to grace. God has not failed the Jewish people. He's preserved the Jewish people within the church. But the Gentiles are supposed to be blessed through the Jewish people, ultimately. And so he's included at the present time Gentiles as well, because the ultimate plan under the New Covenant was to have the entire Jewish nation corporately saved and enjoying all the blessings that were promised to them in the land. And then the Gentile nations also come to faith in the Messiah and then be in the land with the Jewish people together as a kingdom of priests. So this was the great plan that was designed. And we see that, I think, in a small microcosm today, because everything God promised has not failed. It's on the way toward fulfillment, and we're seeing that unfold before our very eyes. Now, when we talk about the New Covenant, the problem is that many Christians assume, in calling the New Testament the New Covenant, that everything is about the church, everything is about Christianity, anything Jewish has been expunged or has been fulfilled, that it's over, that the New Covenant now has only the spiritual aspects, the idea of the land, the idea of blessings in the land, the idea of a rebuilt temple, the idea of a restored priesthood, the idea of even the restored changes to nature and all of the harmony that is presented in texts like Isaiah and Zechariah and many others, is just meant to be understood as a type of hyperbole, something that's an exaggerated form of encouragement.
Allegory,
Allegory is another term. And so when we talk about the church, we see, is there going to be peace on earth? Well, the Bible said that in Isaiah 2:4, all the weapons would be removed, that the nations would learn war no more. And the person looks around and says, well, my goodness,
far from that today.
More threats from nations than ever before, and threats against Israel, which was certainly not to be understood. But they said, well, we got to take that, as you say, allegorically. well, I have peace in my heart. Everyone who comes to Christ has that peace. And so multiplied exponentially, why we will have peace on earth. That's the goal. But of course, we don't see that. And that's, when we come to the text, it's to be understood literally, because it says beating their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. We don't see an end to war. We don't see even a beginning to end to war. Every Christian nation, so-called, has to prepare for war, has to be equipped for that. We have spiritual warfare within the church. Satan is to be bound during this time of the kingdom. He was not bound today.
No.
He's very loose, very active.
Yeah.
As one person said, he's alive and well on planet Earth. And the Jewish people and the Jewish nation, the state of Israel, is the subject of his attack, one of the main focal points of that attack. So how can that fit with what we read in the Old Testament? But nevertheless, we're told when we come to the New Testament, it's the New Covenant. And Jesus said nothing about the land. The apostles really were not land focused. They're all going to take the message to the world, so it's a new perspective. And I said, let's re-examine the New Testament. When we come to teachings of Jesus, we start with the famous Beatitudes. And he says, blessed are the meek or the humble. They will inherit, and we have it translated in English, the earth. But the word tege in Greek is a transliteration, or maybe just a translation of the Hebrew term haaretz. And Jesus undoubtedly was speaking in Hebrew, speaking to his Jewish people. Haaretz always means the land. Okay? We have a word ha'adamah, which means like the ground, but that's not what's used. It's not the earth.
So it's talking about a specific land location.
Well, sure. And his message of the kingdom that he was preaching was the kingdom promised to Israel. And it took place within the land. So we take this basic text, which everyone knows, and realize that we just we Gentilized it a little too much. It really has a focus in the land. That's the proper context. But we move on. And Jesus talks in the Gospels about in the regeneration, the term he uses, this word apologeneia, which is
Matthew 19.
Right, Matthew 19, where he talks about Jewish terms for that is the restoration, the Messianic era, the world to come, the Olam Haba, these type of things, the next age. And he says, when that happens, he says, people from Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, everybody's going to come and sit down with them at table. That's one passage. In Matthew 19, he says, you, the disciples who followed me, okay, in the days of my flesh, let's put it that way, will in the regeneration, be given assignments ruling the 12 tribes of Israel. They'll be and it's the 12 tribes of Israel. It's not the church. There's this focus on this. Now, admittedly, there is not a great deal about the land of Israel in the New Testament because the Bible of the early church, Jesus himself, and the early church was the Tanakh, the Hebrew Scriptures. And it's full of everything in the land. Why would you need to teach people about restoration of the land when they're living in the land? Everything's taking place in the land. The hope is connected with the return of Messiah, and with that comes all the fulfillment of the promises to the land. So why even bring it up? It's assumed, it's understood.
Right.
And yet we have still statements like this. 40 days after the resurrection of Messiah, the disciples are led to the Mount of Olives and up toward a place near Bethany where Yeshua will ascend to heaven. And the disciples, eager, probably, I think, turn around looking at this vantage point as we all have been on the Mount of Olives, see the city of Jerusalem, and realize that Zechariah, in chapter 14, verse 3, after talking about the armies of the world ascending on Jerusalem, that Messiah's feet would stand on the Mount of Olives in that day, and then there'd be a great splitting of the mountain, and the Jewish people would be saved as a result of that. The Lord would go and fight on a day of battle. And they say, Lord, is it this time you're going to restore the kingdom to Israel? Because, okay, we know now that you had to go to the cross, but that's done. Now it's time for the crown. So we're going to see the fulfillment of prophecy now. The armies are surrounding Jerusalem. There's the Romans. And he says, And many people think he says, in some way, no, 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 you've got it all wrong. The kingdom's within you. This is all a spiritual adventure. You know, you go be my witnesses in the spiritual realm. It's not what he says at all. He doesn't correct their understanding of the kingdom. In fact, Acts 1:3 says that for those 40 days he'd been teaching them concerning the kingdom of God. And so unless they're absolute total dunces, and they ask, are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel? This is what the kingdom he was talking about. Because he said the last words to them before the crucifixion in the upper room was, I'll not eat of the Pesach Seder or drink of the fruit of the vine until I do it new with you in my Father's kingdom. So he expected a literal enjoyment of a messianic banquet, let's put it that way. I think the words are drawn from Isaiah chapter 25, verses 6 through 9, that talks about this end-time regathering and banquet that's to be enjoyed as a celebration of victory and triumph of the beginning of the Messianic age. But that's what's in focus.
It's all throughout the Old and New Testament. There is a literal land, Israel, and there will be a literal kingdom. And we have to close for now. Thank you so much for your enlightened discussion. Quickly, how can people know more about your ministry, Dr. Price?
Worldofthebible.com is our website. We have lots of free information for them. We have a nice catalog of all our resources there. They can also access Liberty University and then /Judaic studies. And by doing that, they'll be able to find out more about our Jewish studies program as well.
So good that you could come by and share with us today. Thank you, Dr. Price.
Thank you.
God bless you.